Every summer Top 100. Every summer Top 100. He's got a voice that's really the bomb. He'll make a choice that'll aggravate Tom. I hate to spoil it, but when all's said and done, Merchant of Venus gonna be number one.
This is the water slide at the Caribe Royale. But for most people here at Dice Tower Con, that's not what they're looking for. They're going this way to the convention center. Just want to get a shot of how big this facility is. That entire thing is full of gamers right now, which means I should get back there. But first, number 50 to 41.
50. Mysteria.
Let's kick off the second 50 with Mysterium. This is the Polish edition from Portal Games. I never pulled the trigger on the new Asmodee edition, which tweaks the rules a little bit, but uses very similar art. In Mysterium, you are teaming up. It's a cooperative game. One player plays a ghost that knows who the villain is, who did it, what the weapon is, and what the location was of this terrible event. The other players play psychic investigators, and they are trying to determine these elements by by receiving dreams. These cards that are very sort of fanciful, dreamlike images, and then they try and interpret what those dreams mean and what weapon or what location or what person the ghost player is attempting to lead them toward. The ghost player cannot speak. They are only able to hand out cards. And you do several rounds of this. They have about a week, 6 or 7 turns to figure this all out, to figure out what the weapon is, what the location was, who the person is, and each of the investigator players has one trio of this. And then they have to figure out in one final ultimate test which of those triplets is the actual killer and the actual set. It makes you to think in strange ways. It has similarities to Dixit, uses similar artwork. In fact, I've heard you can play this game with Dixit cards. It's a neat twist and an interesting cooperative experience. You have to sort of play to your audience, if you're the ghost player, and know how a particular person is going to interpret a card you hand them. And that is not always an easy thing to do. It's why Mysterium is my number 50.
49. Perry Rodin, The Cosmic League.
My number 49, Perry Rodin, The Cosmic League, requires just 2 players to play. It's part of the Cosmos 2-player line. It was out from Z-Man Games several years ago now. It is space-based, pick up and deliver, but it's a race between these 2 players. You can upgrade your ship, make it more efficient. You're flying from planet to planet. These planets are arranged moving out from the sun, so there's this mechanism where as you move toward the sun, you're working with gravity. It's easier to move toward those planets, but when you're moving away, you have to spend more time getting there. And there are these cards that represent the goods, and they're 2-sided, so when you deliver a particular good to a location, it flips over and now represents another good that wants to go somewhere else. And these start to disappear, these cards disappear, and once a certain number of them run out, that ends the game. I like it. I mean, it's kind of a 2-player Merchant of Venus. It has that same, not quite as much tongue-in-cheek humor to it, but that efficiency engine, and it being a 2-player game, you've got that direct conflict. Am I doing things better for my opponent? Am I leaving opportunities for my opponent as I move along? Neat game, and worth tracking down. Perry Rodin, The Cosmic League, my number 49.
48. Innovation.
Number 48 is another Carl Chudik game, and actually I think my first Carl Chudik game from Asmodee Games. This is Innovation. And you may wonder, why, Eric, do you have this game with a rubber band around it? It's because this is the first edition of Innovation, and the later editions came in a much smaller, thinner, but slightly wider box, and so getting the third expansion comes with player mats that no longer fit in this box. Sort of annoying, but that Anyway, in Innovation, you are acquiring cards from different ages. There are 10 ages in the game, so you start with very primitive technology, but you will eventually work your way up to really cool stuff. And all of these cards have symbols on them, and you will be stacking them up with different groups. There's like 5 different suits, and at first you're stacking them up, but then you can splay them in different directions, which reveal more of these symbols, and these symbols allow you to do nasty things to your opponents if you have more of that symbol than somebody else. And then each of these different technology cards has a different effect that you can trigger and cause all sorts of crazy things to happen. There's a lot of interlocking mechanisms in here, but I sort of appreciate that. I think this one is a lot of fun to explore. It's probably better as a 2-player game, but still works as a 3 or 4. It can be a little frustrating if you're at the mercy of a particularly nasty combination of cards, but I think that's sort of a hallmark of Chudik's games, that's possible, and you need to be aware of it and find ways to counteract it if that sort of thing happens. There's also a limiting factor in here that if you have a really powerful technology, you can only really score points on that a couple of times before you have to move on from that particular engine. I'd love a better box, but I'll keep my copy of Innovation, my number 48.
47. Ha ha ha. Machikoro.
Number 47 is Machikoro, a game, an engine building game, in which you've got a tableau of cards that you are building that trigger uncertain die rolls. So every turn, somebody's going to roll 1 or 2 dice, and that will trigger not only their buildings, but also your buildings that match that die roll. And you acquire money, and then use that money on your turn to buy more cards, and eventually you're trying to build these sort of milestone buildings, and whoever does all of those first wins the game. It's actually quite simple, and it has similarities to Settlers of Catan, as well as there's another game, Valeria Card Kingdoms, that uses a similar mechanism. But this one I like. I think the expansion is somewhat necessary to give you more options in buildings to buy. If you play just the base game, I think you can get a little stagnant because you always have the same opportunities there, and you can sort of get into a rut with a particular strategy. But once you add the expansion, add more cards in there, things get a little more interesting, get moving, and that's when this game really shines. And that's what puts it in my number 47 slot, Machikoro.
46. Bust.
Bust?
I said bust.
No, you said bust.
I said bust. Hugs.
Try it again.
Number 46. Bust.
No, there's no T at the end.
It's easy to think of Bus as a pick up and deliver game because, yeah, that's what you're doing. You're picking up these giant orange meeples and taking them somewhere. They want to go to either work or the pub or home, depending on what time of day it is. And you are building these different locations for them to go. You're expanding your bus network. You're increasing your number of buses. But what this really is one of the early action selection games, worker placement games. You have 20 actions that you have for the entire game. That's it. And you will spend these actions to do this stuff, to add more buses to your line, or to trigger scoring, because that's the only way you're actually going to earn points. You have to hit the vroom action, which allows you to earn some points. And choosing when to trigger those actions is very tricky. You have to play at least 2 in a round, but you could play more. But knowing that if you spend too many of your cubes, you will be well behind the other players, and you may not get as much use out of those extra cubes. To lose a cube with no benefit is really painful in here. And this one, despite its cutesy art style, it looks like the board was drawn by a 5 or 6-year-old. It does reference a lot of games. You know, it's I don't mind it too much, but it's cute. But the playtime is 2 to 3 hours, and it doesn't look like that. The reason it's 2 to 3 hours is because you have to think about your moves. If you just try and plow your way through this game, you're not going to do well. You need to understand what your action is going to do and cause to happen in regards to the other players' actions and then what the guy next to you doing has just done to your action. And it's deliciously crunchy. I do love Bus. It's my number 46.
45. Fantastica. Fantastica. Fantastica.
There's a lot in my number 45. It's Fantastica. It is a deck building game, but this is another example of theme really being attractive to me. So you are just a normal person, and somebody hands you a bag full of crud, spatulas, dog leashes, just random stuff. But you have fallen into a portal, and all of the objects that you had, all these normal things, have become useful tools, swords, magic potions, and you use these cards now that they're useful magical objects to move your way around the board, defeat creatures, acquire more cards, and ultimately basically complete orders, combinations of symbols in order to score points. And then it's a race to see who can reach a certain point threshold before everybody else. I like the charm of this game. It uses a lot of traditional art. A lot of these images are existing art pieces, and I like how that fits the aesthetic of the game. I like how these ordinary objects become mythical things. And I like how easy it makes the deck building concept. There's a sort of a backpack token that everybody gets that explains draw versus discard pile. So this actually works as a good entry into the deck building concept. And it's one that I haven't played with my kids, but I certainly could. I think it would be an easy entry, especially after playing Harry Potter. They could easily jump into Fantastica. In fact, they should probably go next to each other on the shelf, I think. Fantastica, my number 45.
44. Roar. Attica.
44 is Attica. In this game, there are two ways to win. You've got a map, sort of hex spaces, and there are oracles in different corners of the map. If it's a 2-player, 3-player, 4-player map, these oracles are spread sort of in the corners. And you can, if you connect two of these oracles to your buildings, you are playing buildings down onto the map. If you connect two of them, you win instantly. Hopefully, the other players are going to prevent this sort of thing from happening, and the other way to win is to simply play all of your buildings. You've got a big old mat that explains what your buildings are, and there's adjacencies, or there's sort of a flow to the building. So if you build a fountain, you can then build a building related to that fountain for free that is downstream of that fountain on your chart. But you have to draw these buildings to begin with, so you might not have the thing that allows you to build for free. Or allows you to trigger that sequence. And you could spend turn after turn drawing, but meanwhile your opponents are snatching up those prime locations on the board and maybe racing toward an oracle. So you really have to weigh that cost of waiting versus acting now. And that may be the more expensive route because you have to pay resources to build these buildings. I love that push-pull, that decision point. When do I pounce? When do I abandon a particular cluster of buildings, paying a penalty to jump over somewhere else, maybe to block someone or to grab a very lucrative set of resources on a new tile that has come out. This one has a real nice tension as you're racing to get all these tiles out. I love it. I love Attica. It's my number 44.
43. Flashpoint Fire Rescue.
Number 43 is Flashpoint Fire Rescue. This game has so many expansions in my collection at this point that this, I believe, is just boards, and all of the tokens are now here. And even that doesn't hold everything. I think I have a second. Yeah, there's a second box with more maps. Flashpoint Fire Rescue is a firefighting game. You are heading into a building, different buildings depending on which map you're using, and you're trying to get victims out, survivors, out of the burning building. But meanwhile, the flames are continuing to rise up and spread, and you have to keep them in check while getting hazardous materials out of the building so it doesn't explode, or searching to see where these people are, because you may know something's in the corner, but it might not be a person. It's just, a false alarm or a piece of debris. You don't know what that is. So you have to search all over the place, opening doors, fighting the fire. You can put somebody in the truck and spray a particular quadrant of the board. It really has a teamwork feel to it. It really plays to that cooperative aspect, and it has certainly some random elements. Fire's pretty random. It's very thematic. The illustrations are fantastic. My family enjoys trying this out. I haven't played this with the kids in a while. I think we tried it once and it was a little too complicated for them. I need to bring it out again. But the adults in the family have really enjoyed Flashpoint Fire Rescue. It's my number 43.
42. Spectre Ops.
Number 42 is a game of hide and seek, Spectre Ops, with a nice glossy board. This, spot UV thing that makes parts of the board shiny. This actually exists on the board as well. That if you look at the board from the right angle, the numbers, like grid points, just sort of pop out at you. This is a team game. You've got one player playing sort of a pursued player. I forget what they call it. The agent, I think, who has infiltrated this lab, this facility. And the other players are playing hunters. And the agent is hidden. They're moving along on a pad of paper, basically, secretly. I'm going to move here, I'm going to move here. And they can move a certain number of spaces each turn. And everybody else is trying to find them, figure out what space they're on, capture them, and take them out. Before the agent player can tag a certain number of locations around the board and get back out. Tension? Yeah, this has it. This is a lot of staring at the board and going, okay, what are the possibilities? And then the hunters are discussing what they're doing, but at the same time, they don't want the agent to hear too much of their plans. There is the possibility of a traitor element. One of the hunters could be working for the agent the whole time. It's delicious tension. It's really, and it's very well put together. There's special powers and equipment that the groups can have. The hunters all have special abilities, so depending on what assortment of those you're using, it can be a very different experience. There's a vehicle that can drive the hunters around, and all of these lines of sight rules, dashing in and out of different buildings. It's fun. I'm dying to play it again. Spectre Ops, number 42.
41. Transamerica.
A few numbers back, I mentioned Ticket to Ride as a terrific gateway game, but I think Transamerica outshines it just a little bit, where Ticket to Ride can be a little complex. I mean, yes, it's simple from the perspective of our gamer perspective. This one, I think, even works with other, I guess, case in point. My mother-in-law will play this, but won't play Ticket to Ride. In Transamerica, you are given a group of 5 cities that are in different sections of the board. There is an American map here. There's also Trans-Europa, which uses a European map. And you need to connect them using these track pieces, sticks, little wooden sticks. And everybody pretty much uses the same track. And you can build a certain number each turn. 2 tracks if you're building on the plains, or 1 if you're building over mountains or over a river. And you're just trying to connect your cities first. But you need to decide when you join other people's burgeoning networks, because then you can use theirs and they can use yours. So what helps you more than you helping them? Timing is very important here. And then once you've done that, once somebody connects all of the cities, whoever has, you count up how far you are away of completing your network. and you move that number along this track, and as soon as somebody gets past 13 points on that track, that ends the game, and whoever has moved least far along the track, done the best job connecting their cities, wins. But because of that repetitive nature, because you're doing the same thing, you deal them out, let's do it again, it's very easy for new players to grasp. After one round, you've got the basic concept. I would, of course, recommend the expansion. Vexation is a very inexpensive expansion. In fact, some editions of Transamerica actually include it, that has colored sticks for the players. You get 3 of them that are exclusive use tracks and really make this game shine. Because that adds an extra element of timing. When do I use my exclusive tracks? Usually when I'm joining in with somebody else's network, so I can use their network, but they can't use mine, but then they can do the exact same thing to me. It adds just a little delay, but that little delay is often enough to give you the edge in this game. Transamerica gets overlooked, I think, by many gamers, but I think it's an excellent staple of my collection. It's my number 41.
I mean, really, who needs all this water slide and pool stuff when there are games to play? Anyway, thanks for watching. I'll see you soon. Bye.
He's got a voice that's really the bomb. He'll make a choice that'll aggravate Tom. I hate to spoil it, but when all's said and done, Merchant of Venus gonna be number 1. Every summer, top 100.